Hello, everybody.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, Pat. I linked the annual report into the chat. Did you want to link the agenda also in the chat?
Sure.
Hi, Angie. How's the weather out there in San Diego?
Gorgeous. I don't want to rub it in. I saw what the weather was in Ann Arbor today, but yeah, when we got off the plane yesterday, it was like 87, perfectly sunny, not a cloud in the sky. So yeah, it's very pretty here.
Well, yeah, pretty ugly today, I have to say. Not especially after this weekend.
Well, it wouldn't be spring in Michigan if we didn't have the little dives back into the 40s. So
I wanted to bring this up before we open this up. Well, it is open actually, so anybody can join. But while we're here talking, did we also want to insert in that agenda a short break? A 5-minute break actually usually lasts at least 10 minutes, but I'm just bringing that up before we get started here.
I think it might be wise. I think a lot of people are tired of being on marathon Zooms.
How about you, Pat?
Sure. That sounds good to me. As presenters, it's more, it's also hard on us.
Do you want to do that after the Q&A with Malik? Is that too soon?
Well, that might be too soon. I think we want to encourage people to stay for the whole meeting, right?
Okay. How about, you got a suggestion, Pat?
I'll look at the agenda. I closed the agenda.
Maybe right after the president's report. That's exactly halfway through.
We could do that. We have two more officers to present after that. So that's really a good time. Why not?
Also, speaking of the agenda, I had someone in store check the physical agenda, and as of 6:02 your time, there had been no additions.
I checked at 5:02. Thank you, though, Angie. That's very helpful to know. Do you, Pat, you're the administrator on this Zoom, are you not?
Yep.
Okay, so could you authorize me to share screen? And when Malik joins, which I hope he does any moment now, he should also be set up for screen sharing.
Mhm.
So Angie was happy to see Troy back in the store today. Talked to him because he was hoping that he had assembled the newsletter, the annual report newsletter correctly. And I said, good work. Thank you so much. And glad to see you back.
Yeah, we're glad to have him back, and it's interesting to kind of work with him and Ken simultaneously. But I'm looking forward to, I'm going to task him with a lot more outreach since Ken will retain the graphic stuff. So excited to see where that goes.
So is Ken now working with Ferris State? Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is. And then, continues to help us out on the evenings and weekends. So Pat, Jamie just texted me, said it's kind of unclear what the actual meeting link is. He followed our typical meeting link and it
This-
says another meeting in progress.
It's a separate link. It's a new link that Pat created.
Pat, would you mind shooting Jamie a text or email with it? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm
No
texting.
problem.
Hey Ray, how you doing?
Good, good, good to see you, Carol. Good to see you, Susan. Welcome, Malik.
How are you? I'm not sure why I have your name.
Uh, that is an odd one. I don't really understand. It's because I sent you the link. That's how you got my name. You changed it. Thank you.
I've reclaimed myself.
Well, that was a noble thing to do. Very, very essential. Yeah, Malik, do you need to have screen sharing?
I hadn't planned to. Remind me how long I have.
You can take anywhere you want. 15, 20 minutes is what we were thinking.
Yeah, I think I'll just talk and then, we can have some discussion.
That's the way to go then. Way to go. Hi,
Ray.
Jamie.
Hi, we'll wait probably till maybe like 2 minutes after, 3 minutes after the half hour to get started, just to give folks a chance to filter in.
Yeah, excellent. It's a pretty dismal evening.
Is there an agenda we could look at, or do you have how long is the meeting going to take?
Is that Rosie?
Carol.
Oh, Carol, sorry. Carol, there's an agenda linked in the chat. So that would be, it's labeled as the agenda. And if you click on that, we're hoping to be done by 8:30, and maybe sooner if questions don't get generated. But I'm hoping that members feel free to ask questions, not only of Malik tonight, but of all the officers that are presenting tonight.
So how's everyone doing tonight? We'll wait just a couple more minutes before we get started to let folks pop in here. It's right around dinner time and travel time, so we'll wait a few more minutes. And looks like we've got a lot of great people that we know from the community here. We've got David, we've got Peter Honeyman, we've got Bo, we've got Susan, Tom, a lot of great folks. All right, we'll wait one more minute and then we'll get started. And the agenda is linked in the chat there. Rosie put that there. And folks will also have the ability to add additions after we get done with the question and answers of the officers. And so let's go ahead and, yeah.
One thing we did discuss before you joined, adding a short break after the president's report.
Yeah, I see that actually in the agenda. I've got the spreadsheet in front of me, so.
Okay, excellent.
Yep, good to go. All right, so let's get started. This is the People's Food Co-op annual meeting for the year 2002. And let's take a moment to introduce ourselves. And we'll start with those that are board members and then the general manager. And then if any members of the public want to introduce themselves, there's actually not too many of us. We could probably even say hi, all of us. So I'm Jamie McGarrett. I'm the president of the board. And I'll hand it off to our vice president now, Pat.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Pat Zabawa. I've been on the board for 2 years. I'll hand it to Ray.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ray Anderson. I've been on the board for 4.5 years now, and tonight's my last meeting. So hoping to have a good meeting tonight and wish everyone well.
All right, Amanda, you want to go ahead?
Sure. My name is Amanda. I'm a board member, staff member, board secretary. I've been on the board since I think 2017. And I'm running for re-election this year.
Okay, great. Michael.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Metzger, and I've been on the board for just a year now, and I live not too far from the co-op. I teach at the university in the business school, and I joined because I like my local grocer and I wanted to get to know my community. So it's been a real joy to get to know the board members and the people that work at the co-op. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. Thank you.
Excellent. Rosie.
Hello, my name is Rosie. I am the administrative assistant to the board and I'm taking minutes today.
Excellent. Angie.
My name is Angie Boyles. I'm the general manager of the food co-op. I've been the GM for 4 years now, but I've held many other positions in the co-op. And just a couple of days ago, I actually realized this coming June will be 20 years since the first time I was hired at PFC as a grocery stacker.
Excellent. Susan.
So my name is Susan Randall. I'm a candidate for the board of directors. I've been a member of the co-op in Ann Arbor since 2018. And that was the year that I relocated from South Dakota, where I had been a member of the co-op there for about 40 years, I think. I lived there 40 years and I joined within the first year or so of moving to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So, and I was on the board of directors of that co-op for a few period of years before moving here. So anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing our speaker tonight, Mr. Malik, about Detroit and how you're addressing food insecurity there, and and learning more about the co-op community in Ann Arbor in the days to come.
Excellent. Is our other candidate on? I'm not seeing. Let's see.
I don't see him.
Yeah, don't see him. Okay. How about any of the members of the community? Any other members of the community? Would you like to introduce yourselves?
I will. My name is Matthew Graff, former board member, co-op member. Thank you for having an annual meeting, even though we can't all be together cooperating in person. You know who you are.
Excellent. Very cool. All right. Well, let's move on, and there'll be opportunities for folks to interact with each other and have discussion throughout the evening. And right now, I'm going to hand it over to Ray. Well, let me actually do the agenda real quick, just to give folks what's a sense of time and what's going to be happening. So at 6:40, we're going to start with our guest speaker with an introduction from Ray, and then about 7 o'clock or 7:10, we'll have some Q&A and some discussion. Then we're going to have a raffle, and then we'll start after the raffle with the reports from the general manager, the president. Then we'll take a break. Then we'll have the vice president's report, the treasurer's report, then another raffle. Then we'll talk a little bit about, Michael's going to talk a little bit about the member survey, the results that we had. Then we'll talk about the election results. And then some Q&A with the members, any questions that you might have, and any additional agenda items. Then we'll have another raffle, and then we're going to have a remembrance for Linda Diane Felt, and then we'll have a little bit of a closing goodbye to folks. So I'm going to hand it over to Ray Anderson right now to give an introduction to our speaker.
Welcome, one and all. I have followed the work of tonight's guest speaker for many years, and I have greatly admired all that he has brought to the Detroit Black community, who have been underrepresented and underserved for so many years. Tonight, People's Food Co-op of Ann Arbor welcomes Malik Yakini. Mr. Yakini is an activist, educator, co-founder and executive director of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. He has been a driving force in the formation of the Detroit People's Food Co-op and continues as a member of their board of directors. In 2009, he spearheaded efforts to establish the Detroit Food Policy Council and served as its first chair. He is co-founder of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. Please raise your hands and join me in welcoming tonight Malik Yakini.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. And I'm humbled to be here for a number of reasons. One, the People's Food Co-op of Ann Arbor has been tremendously supportive of the Detroit People's Food Co-op, both in terms of advice. We've had folks who have toured the stores a few times over the year, toured the store a few times over the years. There was a $500 donation that was made a few years ago. And the most recent financial donation is part of the campaign by other Michigan co-ops to support the Detroit People's Food Co-op. So I'm tremendously inspired to see Principle 6 really is a real thing. And I can tell you it's not just the Ann Arbor People's Food Co-op, but also we've gotten tremendous support and advice from other co-ops in the state of Michigan and other co-ops throughout the country. So I think the co-ops remain a bright light in a sometimes dim society. So I have to tell you, I'm a bit surprised when I look at your faces, because I remember the Ann Arbor People's Food Co-op from the 1970s. I was a student at Eastern Michigan University, and I actually had a job driving a truck a few times a week, delivering films from the library at Eastern Michigan University to the library at University of Michigan. They had a film exchange. And so while I was making those runs, I had the chance to explore Ann Arbor and to explore the opportunities that were available for a new vegetarian. In 1975, I had stopped eating meat and was becoming more aware of holistic foods. And so Ann Arbor was the perfect place to explore that. But I'm a little surprised because I guess in some ways I freeze framed my image of the Ann Arbor People's Food Co-op, the People's Food Co-op of Ann Arbor in the 1970s. And I'm kind of expecting to see people with long hair and wearing earth shoes, but none of you look like that. So I guess it's a new day in the co-op world. And I'm kind of jokingly saying, uh-oh, somebody showing, okay, thank you so much, thank you. So we have at least one holdout here, I see. But I'm kind of jokingly saying that, but on the real tip, that era really helped to shape my understanding of what co-ops are. And I think that, the late 1960s and 70s, or, what people in the co-op world are calling the third wave, I think was very significant because a number of co-ops emerged, but they emerged as part of this questioning of power relationships in the United States and people's questioning of the standard American diet. And so I think a lot of good came out of that. And thankfully, People's Food Co-op in Ann Arbor is one of the institutions that's been able to make the transition from that time period to this time period. And I'm certain it hasn't been easy because values have changed a lot and how people see the world has changed a lot. And co-ops are not the only game in town where not the only place now where you can go buy brown rice. Most big chain supermarkets have many of those products now as well. But I just want you to know that, again, I'm tremendously personally inspired by the example of the People's Food Co-op of Ann Arbor, and it has helped to shape my consciousness about what a co-op could be. So I'll give you just a bit of background about myself, and then I'll talk about the organization I lead, the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, and I'll talk briefly about the Detroit People's Food Co-op and the building that we're building to house the Detroit People's Food Co-op, the Detroit Food Commons. So I've already told you that, I was in college in the 1970s, So you probably can guess that I'm not a young guy, so I'm 66 years old. And in many ways, I'm a child of the 1960s and 70s. My values and view of the world was certainly shaped in that rebellious time period. And I guess I'm what people call a true believer. There were lots of people during that time period who were involved in protest or, higher consciousness, spiritual consciousness, or political consciousness. But many people after, 3, 4, 5 years kind of just fell back into the mainstream. For some reason, the ideas that emerged from that time period really resonated with me and continued to guide the trajectory of the rest of my life. And so all of my adult life has really been dedicated to trying to build a more just and equitable world, particularly for African Americans, since that's the group I was born into, and that's the group that I lived the majority of my life with. That's who my neighbors are and my family and friends, but also being conscious of the fact that African Americans don't live in a bubble, that we live in a world with other human beings. And so while we certainly want to unapologetically lift up Black people, we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that moves with the consciousness of the essential unity of humankind. So in some ways, my involvement in this co-op is related to my own personal journey towards health. And I'll go back to 1969. I was in the 8th grade, and a teacher I had played Malcolm X's Message to the Grassroots for my 8th grade social studies class. And it had a tremendous impact on me because he talked about the food that African Americans eat and related it to our experience as enslaved persons, and how the Africans who were enslaved had to eat the least desirable foods. For example, on a pig, the tail and the snout and the intestines, the parts that would be thrown away, African Americans used those and made delicacies from them. So the reason this impacted me so much personally is because prior to hearing this, my very favorite food in the world was chitlins, or what they call in the commercial world chitterlings. And I was upset because my mother would only make them once a year on New Year's Day. And so hearing for the first time my love of chitlins being placed within some kind of historical context was really mind-blowing for me, because prior to that time, I hadn't really thought about food in any kind of social or historical context. I just thought about it in terms of whether or not it tasted good and whether or not I could get some more when I wanted it. And so as a 13-year-old, I started thinking about food and realizing that the kind of soul food diet that I was raised on, that most African Americans continue to eat, is not conducive for obtaining optimal health. And so I began to slowly change my diet. Now, I won't go into all of the details of that, except just to say in 1975, I stopped eating meat. I started learning how to fast. By 1981, I had become what I now know is called a vegan. I didn't know what it was called then, but I had stopped eating dairy and eggs and all those types of things. So I had this personal concern for health and for, high quality food, but I didn't know there was a movement around this. I was an activist, but an activist in other spheres. And so in fast forward to about 1989, I helped to found a school, a K-8 school that was an African-centered school, a school that in many ways was a response to the lack of inclusion of African-American perspectives and achievements in the curriculum of Detroit Public Schools. And so myself and several other people started a school to make sure that African-American children had a curriculum that situated themselves within their own historical and cultural continuum. As part of the school's curriculum in 1999, we started doing pretty serious gardening with the children because we were concerned about two things. One, on the mundane level, we thought it was important for children to know how to grow food. So we created a school garden, and we wanted to encourage people to, at least on a small level, to push back against the corporate food system by at least producing small amounts of food, trying to plant the seed of that in people's consciousness. And also we had lots of activities in the school that were around raising the consciousness of the school community about the political, social, economic, and nutritional aspects of food. Long story short, interest within the school was so high for these activities, and that people outside of the school started saying to us, well, we want to do a garden too. In fact, I skipped a step. We had about a network of 20 gardens of people associated with the school that we maintain collectively in a collective. And so other people outside of the school wanted to participate. And so again, long story short, we created the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network in 2006 to have a larger container to hold the work. So a couple other points that I think are important to know to kind of frame the work that we're doing in Detroit. The first is that I have been vehemently opposed to the system of capitalism for all of my adult life. And the organization that I lead, the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, is also an anti-capitalist organization. We think capitalism is a terrible system for human beings because of the great inequity that it creates and the great disparity in wealth and the concentration of wealth in the hands of a very few. But we also think it's a terrible system for the planet because it primarily views the earth as a place from which to extract resources or extract other things that can be turned into wealth. And that mentality of seeing the earth as a commodity to be extracted from is in large part responsible for the climate chaos that we see today. The other thing that I've been opposed to all of my adult life is the system of white supremacy, this global system that still gives unearned privilege to people who are defined as white and tends to concentrate power and ownership and wealth in the hands of people who are defined as white. And so both of those kind of frame all of the work I've done during my adult life. And so co-ops have been of great interest to me for some time because of two main reasons. One, in the context of a capitalist system, they are the only opportunity that I know of that people have to really galvanize our collective wealth and our collective wisdom, and also to create, to some extent, a closed loop system which minimizes extraction and is able to circulate money within a community rather than just have that money stripped out. And so what we see in the city of Detroit is we see the intersection of the system of capitalism and the system of white supremacy, where we see, in fact, all throughout the United States and Black communities, wherever there are significant Black communities, what we see is other ethnic groups who have come in and who are controlling the entire retail economy of those communities. And so the wealth that members of the community spend in those stores is stripped out, and it's not circulated to create jobs, to create ownership, to create community empowerment. Now, in many cases, even though, you know, I mentioned the system of white supremacy, the system of white supremacy functions in many different ways, and everybody who is a benefactor of the system of white supremacy is not considered to be white. And so in Detroit, it just so happens that the majority of the stores are owned by an ethnic group called Chaldeans. And, you know, I want to be clear that I'm not anti-Chaldean at all. If you go to Chicago, it's going to be another ethnic group that owns the stores in the Black community. If you go to LA, it's another ethnic group. So the ethnic groups change, but the scenario pretty much remains the same. And so I was concerned about kind of to summarize, the racialized extraction of wealth from Black communities on the retail food level. And food co-ops seem to me to be the only way to begin to stop or to begin to slow down that bleeding of the resources from Black communities, and to find a way to capture that value so that those communities can develop instead of being intentionally underdeveloped. And so with that kind of framing, from the beginning of the creation of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network in 2006, supporting existing food co-ops and creating a food co-op was one of our early objectives from our first meeting. We were incredibly naive And we thought that this was a venture that could be done fairly quickly. We learned just how naive we were over the last 12 years. But we started by supporting an existing buying club in the city of Detroit, where we would volunteer with that. It functioned once a month. And then in 2009, we started a buying club that also functioned once a month. And we had about 300 members of the buying club, and we operated that from 2009 until 2016. The buying club was always intended to be a precursor to the brick and mortar food co-op. So we were buying through United Natural Foods Incorporated, which I would imagine is a main supplier of the People's Food Co-op in Ann Arbor. I don't know for sure, but my guess would be that that's the case. And one of the things that became clear from the beginning is that even within natural foods or within the cooperative movement, that capitalism is still very much at play because United Natural Foods swallowed up a lot of the smaller distributors and became, this kind of giant that you almost are forced to go through. But again, trying to not bore you with all the details, but to kind of give you the broad parameters, we started to have problems with UNFI because they closed their buying club office. They had an office especially designed to service buying clubs. And so we started to see on our monthly invoices some charges that couldn't be accounted for. And we were losing about $200 a month because of these erroneous charges. And there was no one at UNFI who could really answer our questions in any kind of way that made sense to us, at least because they had closed their buying club office. So we decided that we couldn't continue to lose $200 a month and that we were going to discontinue the buying club and just put all of our efforts into the brick and mortar co-op. Now, mind you, we had started working on the brick and mortar co-op in 2010. And we started by doing a feasibility study just to gauge community interest. We did like 300 surveys of people outside of grocery stores and farmers markets in Detroit. And we did about 12 focus groups. And so that study suggested there was enough support to move forward. And we started moving forward immediately. One of the things that took us so long is that we decided pretty early on that we didn't just want a food co-op. We had visited the Kalamazoo People's Food Co-op and were impressed with the shared use kitchens that they had in the kind of annex attached to the store and with the community meeting space. And we decided we wanted those to be two elements of this development that we envisioned. And so it morphed from just a co-op grocery store to this facility where we were going to have a grocery store, kitchens, a community meeting space, and office space. And so as we began to think about where we might locate all of those functions, we had already, through a process of research, identified the neighborhood we want to be located in. But in that neighborhood, there were no existing buildings with sufficient adjacent parking that could accommodate our needs. So we realized several years ago that we were going to have to build the building from the ground up. So it's hard enough to establish a food co-op, and I'm told that on average it takes about 7 years to establish a food co-op, and that's just if you're leasing a space from somebody else. But we had this audacious vision of not only starting a food co-op, but building and owning the building that the co-op is located within. So we put a lot of time into identifying the real estate that could accommodate this building that we had to build. And in retrospect, when I tell people, when I tell people about the lessons learned in our journey, one of the mistakes that we made is that early on, we put way too much energy into real estate, into architects, into the physical structure, instead of putting most of that energy in the early days into really building the co-op membership and building the team of people who was going to move this project forward. And so if someone would just start from scratch today and ask me for my advice, I would tell them definitely focus on the people side first, focus on the development side secondly. But, strange things happen in Detroit. And as fate would have it, it's probably a good thing that we did focus so much on real estate, because we're living in a highly gentrified Detroit where property values are going up tremendously, and where in a few years it will probably be almost impossible to obtain the type of property that we were able to obtain to build this building that we're building. So we are locating right on Detroit's Main Street on Woodward Avenue in an area called the North End. And let me tell you, locating on the main street of a major city is no small feat. And so we have almost an ideal location, and we're balancing a couple of considerations in terms of location. One, in my conversations with a friend of mine several years ago who ran a farmer's market, she shared with me that food projects that are rooted in social justice have a challenge. And that challenge is that on one level, you want to locate, if you're trying to serve people who are underserved, who don't have lots of good grocery options, which is what we're doing with the Detroit People's Food Co-op. Let me be clear. We're intentionally trying to serve underdeveloped, underserved communities. And so if that is your objective, then you have to find a location where the folks who are low and moderate income feel like they're welcome and feel at home. But also you have to find a location where folks who have higher incomes, more disposable income, feel safe coming and don't feel like their car is going to be stolen or they're going to be knocked in the head as they leave the store. And so finding that kind of marginal community that serves both low income folks and more affluent folks is really one of the keys to having a food establishment that is rooted in this idea of social justice. And so the North End community that we chose has those kind of demographic factors. Another factor is that we were concerned about accessibility from the entire city. And so of course, locating on Woodward Avenue, Woodward is a main thoroughfare from north to south. And so even though we are unapologetically and primarily focused on Detroit's African-American community, as I had mentioned earlier, we also are not stupid. And so if you could just for imagine, think about African-American people as being a nation, let's say for the sake of argument, a nation within a nation. All nations have both a domestic economic policy and they have a foreign economic policy. And so the domestic economic policy kind of dictates how things happen within that nation, or in this case, within the African-American community. But also all nations are always trying to get funds from other nations into their nation, which is why we hear so much about the trade imbalance with China. And so if you think of African Americans as a nation inside of a nation in that sense, we are concerned about I'll put it like this, how do we provide an opportunity for the tens of thousands of people who work in Detroit, but live in the suburbs north of Detroit and travel from Detroit to those suburbs every day as they're leaving Detroit. And so we intentionally wanted to locate on the east side of the street, which is where the traffic is flowing as people are leaving Detroit, because we want to provide an opportunity for folks living in the suburbs to support the Detroit People's Food Co-op. So we're really, doing this delicate dance between unapologetically supporting Black self-determination, but also having the wisdom to know that we don't live in the world by ourselves and that we want to build relationships with other groups that are beneficial. Those are some of the factors that caused us to decide on the neighborhood and ultimately the specific location that we landed in. I'm not going to give you the whole story about all of the hoops that we jumped through in all of our attempts to get land, but I'll just say they were multiple, and that finally we were able to, in this year, between January and March, finalize the purchase of 10 parcels from the city of Detroit, one actually on Woodward Avenue at Euclid, where the building will be built. The building, by the way, is called the Detroit Food Commons. It's a 31,000 square foot new construction, 2-story building that will be building the Detroit People's Food Co-op will be the occupant of the entire first floor of the building. We'll have 4 shared use kitchens on the second floor, a 3,000 square foot community meeting space, and office space for the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. So we're building this building on the southeast corner of Woodward and Euclid. So maybe I'll end by saying, because there's lots and lots and lots of details, but I want to have some time for discussion, by saying that we realized about 4 or 5 years ago that the city and also financiers were more comfortable talking with people who are professional developers. I'm not, or at least I was not prior to this experience, a professional developer. People tell me I am a developer now, I guess maybe so. But they were more comfortable talking to people who they had attended college with and who kind of knew the same people in the profession and knew all the lingo. But also we realized that as we were talking to financiers that we needed somebody with deeper pockets, because one of the flaws of capitalism is a self-replicating system in a sense. Because if you go to a lending institution and you say, Mr. Banker, I'd like to borrow $1 million. Well, the banker wants to know, what do you have that's worth $1 million? So that if you default on the loan, we get our $1 million. The bank is not going to lose. And so our organization didn't have deep pockets like that. So we had to find a guarantor in kind of the same way that if you're a teenager and you're trying to buy a car and the car lot doesn't think you have sufficient income and they have you get your parents as a co-signer. So we kind of had to get a co-signer on this debt financing that we were going after for the construction of this 31,000 square foot building. And so Develop Detroit Incorporated is a nonprofit developer that we partnered with. And this is after exploring possible relationships with other developers. We finally settled for them. Their values were largely aligned with ours, and they were willing to serve as the guarantor. Of course, there is some, you could say financial value in serving as a guarantor, or maybe a better way to put it is that there's a certain amount of risk that they're assuming by serving as the guarantor. And so, so there's some financial value associated with that. In other words, so they're putting money in escrow that they could use for other development projects. And so there's some dollar amount associated with that. So, so they're not, serving as guarantor just because they're nice people, but there's a business arrangement kind of guiding that as well. So they have been in the project with us for 4 years. And for the last 2 years, they served directly as project manager. We actually had a prior project manager who our organization had contracted with, who passed in January of 2020. And so at that time, I asked Develop Detroit to take over the project management of it. So I'll end by just saying that we had our groundbreaking ceremony on Saturday. Finally, we closed on the financing about 2 weeks ago. It's about a $20 million project. And we have the vast majority of the financing in place. There's still $1.5 million we have to continue to raise over the next year for fixtures and furnishings, but that won't stop the beginning of construction of the building. And so our capital stack was New Markets tax credits, traditional debt funding. We had about $5 million from local philanthropy. We were able to get the Kellogg Foundation, Knight Foundation, McGregor Fund, Kresge Foundation, Ford Foundation to put in a fairly large amounts of money and to help us to kind of subsidize this so that the co-op itself opens with almost no debt. So the way we're structuring this, the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network and Develop Detroit are the developers, and we're financing, through our funding sources, the building of the building, and really many of the costs that the co-op would have had to incur, like for refrigeration, for example, we're absorbing that in the development cost and leasing the equipment to the co-op for $1 per year. I'm sorry, $300 per year, so that the co-op has a much better chance of being financially viable because it's not saddled with a lot of debt from the beginning. So we're expecting construction to continue from this week through mid-June of 2023. And we are hopeful that a few weeks after that, and I don't know how many weeks exactly, we will open the store. And the reason I say I don't know how many weeks exactly, I just got off a call with a cohort of other co-ops. And we were talking with one co-op that was talking about how they're doing training of their staff 8 weeks before opening on the actual equipment in the store. And so that may delay our opening if we travel that route and make sure that we have everything installed and we have, you know, some weeks where staff can learn all the equipment prior to opening. But certainly by the summer of 2023, the Detroit Food Commons and the Detroit People's Food Co-op will be open. So again, I'll end by just saying we appreciate the solidarity shown by the People's Food Co-op in Ann Arbor, as well as other co-ops in the state of Michigan and other co-ops throughout the country. And we are proud to be soon to be a new member of the Michigan co-op community. Thank you.
That was excellent. That was very informative. Right now, I would like to just open it up for folks to ask questions and to have a dialogue, basically. So it doesn't have to be a proper question and answer. We can just sort of talk a little bit. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that people are interested in terms of what was just discussed.
Jamie, do you have on earth shoes also?
What's that?
I said, do you have on earth shoes also?
Right now I'm barefoot, so.
Well, that qualifies you.
Yeah. All right, folks, so go right ahead. Questions, comments, thoughts?
My quick question, Malik, is how can we best support?
Well, I think you've already been supportive. And so I tell you, just the moral support is encouraging. You have no idea, you know, I mean, folks that I've never met personally, you know, who are like putting energy and money into helping. It's tremendously supporting the morale of folks on our end. So, you know, I'll just say we appreciate the support that we've gotten already. But, you know, if there's any ways that we can cooperate, I'm not sure what that might look like. You know, if there's ways we can collectively purchase going forward, if there's collective trainings that our staffs can engage in, I don't know. We'll explore that, but we want to build a long-term relationship of solidarity with the Ann Arbor People's Food Co-op.
Yeah, Susan, go ahead.
I loved your presentation. Thank you very much for telling your story.
Thank you.
I have a question about food co-ops typically have members invest up to some dollar amount that's usually the board of directors establishes.
Yes.
And I personally have been struggling with that a little bit because if you want to really be there as a grocery that serves a wide range of customers of a wide range of means, some of them, that's going to be a real barrier. And if you keep advertising, well, we're a member co-op, it's like, well, what does it mean to be a member and can I be in it or not? Could you talk to us a little bit about how to message that and how you structure it?
Sure. So we clearly grappled with that same question. And, you know, I mentioned that we had visited several Michigan co-ops, but we also visited the notorious Park Slope Co-op in Brooklyn. And when I say notorious, I don't mean that to cast them in any kind of negative light. But we looked at how they're operating, and a couple things we decided against. One is the kind of exclusivity that they have, that you have to be a member owner to shop there. So on the occasion I visited, the two occasions I visited the Park Slope Co-op, I couldn't even walk in the door unless I was with with a member owner. And even walking in the door, I had to go to the co-op office, get a guest tag, and I still couldn't buy anything. And so, you know, we looked at that, and they also have the requirement, the work requirement for their member owners, which many co-ops had in the 60s and 70s. But in talking to some of the folks in management there, what they conveyed to me is trying to find work for 17,000 people each month, meaningful work, is very difficult. And that oftentimes they would have to have paid employees come back and redo something that a volunteer member owner did. So we decided against that work requirement, but we also decided against the exclusivity. So the Detroit People's Food Co-op is open to anyone, whether they're a member owner or not. There will be periodic at the register discounts for member owners, but for the most part, 99% of the time, everybody pays the same thing at the register. In terms of the investment that member owners have to make, we looked at that carefully also. And we wanted to balance two considerations. The first is the realities of the economic struggles that people are dealing with, and many people are dealing with in the city of Detroit, and trying to be sensitive to that and trying to come up with an amount that did not become prohibitive for folks who don't have a lot of disposable income. But the other factor that we wanted to balance is that this is not a charity effort. This is not us coming in to help save somebody. This is us mobilizing people to work on their own behalf. And even within the emergency food community, there's a lot of discussion now about this kind of charity model and how in some ways, even though the intentions of the charity model might be good, it really ends up underdeveloping and debilitating people. And so what we're really trying to do is mobilize people to work on their own behalf. And so since that is an essential part of the ideas that guide our co-op, everybody has to bring something to the table. That's really the bottom line. So there's no free memberships. Everybody has to bring something to the table. So what we've tried to do is make how people bring that amount to the table flexible enough that people have some options. And so the first thing that we have available is we have what we call community assistance scholarships. So for low-income folks who live within a mile radius of the store, instead of paying the normal $200 investment, they're able to put up $100. And then we have a fund where other folks have put in money into this fund, and we supplement the $100 they're putting in. So they're still coming in at the $200 level, but half of that is being put in on their behalf, but they still have to make an investment. The other thing is that we have a payment plan. So either people can pay the $200 all in one whop, or they can pay it in 10 $20 installment payments. And if they, even if with the scholarship, they can pay that in $10 payments. So, so those are the two considerations that we balanced out. And hopefully, well, I'll say we have 1,460 member owners so far. We are fairly certain that we'll hit the 2,000 mark really soon, because as soon as people start seeing bricks go up on the ground, this will become a reality for a lot of folks, whereas frankly, a lot of people didn't think it was ever going to happen. And I've heard that kind of chatter in the Detroit community because it took us 12 years. Some people were saying it was a scam and we were ripping people off. But again, as soon as the building actually starts going up, all that discussion will stop and we'll be flooded with new member owners. You're welcome.
Gaia, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about those 12 years. And, you know, clearly you're a person with commitment and vision and staying power. But how did the organization maintain the persistence through all those years?
It wasn't easy, I'll tell you that. And everybody who started with us didn't get to the finish line. Well, I like to think that my persistence had something to do with the organizational persistence. But also, you know, we have a team of people that have supported this in various ways, and you know, who wanted to see it happen, and who, along with me, were just relentless. And but the other thing is this: the reality is, to stay in the game 12 years, you got to have money, because although all those 12 years were costing us, especially from maybe 7 years ago when we hired a project manager, right? Because we're going after money, we're going after real estate, you know, we're meeting with architects, all this stuff costs money. And so you got to have money to stay in the game too. And so we were fortunate to be in a position where, you know, we were able to get funding and keep the funding flowing to keep us in the mix. You know, in the early days, for example, out of Ann Arbor, my friend Orrin Hesterman and the Fair Food Network, you know, made a donation. The Detroit Economic Growth Corporation made a donation. The Wallace Center made a donation. So, you know, first we were getting small grants, but they were enough to kind of keep us in the game. So I would say it was a combination of the persistence, the dogged focus on the end result, but also being able to cajole funders to get enough funding and keep the money flowing so that we could stay afloat 12 years. But let me say this, in 2019, we almost weren't afloat. The parent organization is sometimes what we call the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, which started both the Detroit People's Food Co-op and we started the development side. But in 2019, frankly, we were flat broke. In December, I was borrowing money to meet payroll. And I don't want to go into the long, gory details about how we got to that situation, but we were at a very, very low point. And you know, by a year after that, you know, we were in fairly healthy financial shape. But there were some real hurdles, I'll just say that.
All right, any other questions or comments, thoughts? Yeah,
I have one question, Malik.
Yes.
Did the Detroit Co-op experience the same thing that our co-op did and that the other nonprofit organizations that I serve on volunteer boards with experienced, that federal COVID relief and funding is the difference between being underground and gone and being here today with a relatively surprisingly healthy balance sheet? That's my question.
Believe it or not, it's not. And neither the organization I lead, Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, or the Detroit People's Food Co-op got any direct COVID funding. Now, what did happen though, is by March of 2020, when the pandemic was really kind of first full blown and the state was shutting down and people were seeing empty grocery store shelves on the daily news, many people were shocked into seeing for the first time the fragility of the food system. And so we started to get donations from funders, unsolicited donations. I mean, almost every day for about a month, people were calling me, you know, we got 10,000, we got 20,000, we just want to give to you. So it wasn't direct government COVID funding, but it was philanthropy kind of maybe acknowledging that there were some problems in the food system. But even that was kind of based on the charity model. And what myself and several other people were trying to get people to see is that throwing short-term money at, you know, fixing and having food available for people is not really the solution. The solution is investing in the long-term building of infrastructure so that we have vibrant local food economies that communities are in control of, so they're not so vulnerable to crises that happen in society. And so I'm not sure many of the funders were able to make that shift in their thinking. You know, I think a few, or perhaps I should say a few program officers within some of the foundations, I think made the shift in their thinking and tried to push things forward. But surprisingly, again, to answer your question, we didn't get any direct COVID funding, but the donations we got from philanthropy and individuals, I should say that. Also, we had one fairly affluent white family from California call me and say, you know, we got this, you know, pretty large sum of money that our family has made. And the guy, his father who owned a business that made parts for the auto manufacturers, made his money in Detroit. So he said this family wealth that he had inherited, he wanted to, as in a certain way, as a form of reparations, give it back to a Black organization doing work in Detroit. So, you know, this family gave us $100,000, and you know, we've been able to use that to hire a fund developer. So, you know, there was all kind of money flowing at us. It wasn't so much directly the COVID government money, but I think COVID helped to shift people's perspective. And then that was closely followed by the murder of George Floyd and the protests throughout the world against the way police have been dealing with Black people in this country. So I think those two events in a strange way benefited the Detroit People's Food Co-op, because not only were people suddenly concerned about the fragility of the food system, but people are also suddenly concerned about racial justice. And so we were kind of perfectly positioned at that point for all of the folks in philanthropy who either genuinely made a shift in their consciousness or realized that they at least had to put forward the face that they had made a shift. And so we benefited from that tremendously.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for their questions and comments. Right now, we're going to move on to a section. I'd like to thank our speaker and we want to move on. We're a little bit behind time-wise, but we're going to do right now a basket raffle. So Pat, you want to take it over from here?
Sure. Yeah. I'll just say real fast, we as the board with members' input, we were trying to find a way to bring some of the energy of the in-person annual meeting back, and we decided to offer some PFC gift baskets. We appreciate, the overall sentiment is we appreciate our members' support, attendance, attention to our co-op. So at 6:40, I collected all the registrations, and I will randomly draw someone right now. And we decided as a board, if that person is here or not, they as long as they registered, they deserve a basket. And Liz Trudeau won this basket. So Liz, I have your email from registration, and I will email you at the end of this meeting and connect you with Angie to collect a basket. Thanks so much.
Congratulations, Liz. All right, we're going to move on now with the president's report. So Angie, take it away.
Thank you, Jamie. And thank you to everyone.
Sorry, general manager's report.
I knew what you meant.
Yes.
Thank you everybody for taking the time to come to our virtual annual meeting. I was trying to encapsulate 2021 and summarize it for the membership. It was a very interesting year. The second year of COVID, we had the same recruitment challenges you were reading about on the news for all levels in our organization. But we were also trying, and myself and PFC leadership, trying to vision for a post-COVID world and also how to pivot after that first year. So as some of you may be aware, we opened and closed again the cafe, briefly launched the hot bar and salad bar, closed those again due to staffing. And really throughout the year, we struggled quite a bit with sales. We ended the year at about 4.1 million in sales. Whereas, pre-COVID, we were fairly close to 6. So, boiling down to our bottom line, our financials were audited this year, as they are every 3 years. And the CPAs actually declared a profit for 2021. But I want to be very clear and transparent to the membership. This was not a profit from operations. This bottom line profit came from non-operating income, specifically one-time COVID payments from the government. So much has happened in 2020 where we had a break-even financial year due to government funding. Our profit, while great, and I'm deeply appreciative that those funds were made available to us, still doesn't address the operational needs of our store to be profitable through the opening and the doors and selling groceries. So kind of looking forward to 2022, as I was doing my budgeting and planning, I looked at our operations in every way I could. Should we come to market differently in terms of prepared foods? Should we use that space for something different? All sorts of things, all sorts of scenarios. I tested for financial feasibility. What I believe is a viable path to profitable operations is actually to reopen those prepared foods. We very much need the sales and the margin from them. And in fact, our margin structure only functions with them open. So that is something I'm trying incredibly hard to get up and running, but really the theme sales, that's what's hurting us. You know, less and less people choosing to shop the co-op, shopping less frequently or buying less. You know, we need to kind of collectively as a community reinvest in shopping at the co-op, and then co-op operations needs to both make sure that that shopping experience was meeting the customer and members' needs, as well as inviting them back for another visit, and finding community members who maybe aren't familiar with the co-op or have thought about coming there but haven't made the trip, and you know, putting out our hands and opening our doors to say, you know, everybody is welcome, and this is our community's food co-op, and everybody should be able to use this resource, this community gem. So in summation, both 2020 and 2021, primarily due to COVID, were very financially challenging, yet financially offset years for us. Going forward, the imperative is that we're profitable through store operations. And as far as my plea to the community and to the membership, you know, your piece of that equation is to, you know, make the decision where you can yourself and with your household members, and, you know, tell friends, you know, maybe one more trip a month to the co-op makes sense for you. Maybe $10 more on that trip. Whatever you can do to show your tangible financial support for the co-op, you know, that is our lifeblood. That's what keeps the lights on. And we need our community to come together and really invest and reinvest to keep our co-op going. So again, you know, thank you guys very much for coming. There will be a Q&A session at the end of my and all the officers' reports. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions then, or feel free to reach out to me in store or via email or call. You know, I would love to do my best to answer any questions or concerns you may have. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Angie. And up next is myself actually to do the president's report. So want to reference a common theme that I've had in the president's reports written in the newsletters and the annual meeting last year and at meetings and whatnot, which is I'm really happy about the fact that the board worked hard with the general manager to get a multi-year plan in place that basically outlines the steps to profitability and then next steps to maintaining the co-op long into the future. And this is something that's actually in our policies to define, but we spent a lot of time on it, I think, delving into this plan far more than previous boards have. And essentially this plan includes, you know, short-term and long-term. There's two sections of it. And in the long term, ultimately looking at opportunities for another space, a space that will allow us to flourish. There's a lot of limitations, as Angie has mentioned, in our current space. There will be a distilled version in some form, I think, available for the membership to understand this multi-year plan. Obviously, there's some things that have to be redacted because of they might tip off competition. So there's some things that have to remain private, but the bulk of it can be synthesized into something that the membership can see. And I think the next iteration of the board will be able to work on that. And of course, the board is doing virtual meetings, has done virtual meetings. I want to point out that, you know, I mentioned this in the printed report. You know, I value human communications and in-person communications. That being said, people, I think, were able to show up at meetings who might otherwise not be because of the virtual element. So it's been kind of a mixed bag. On the one hand, there's I think a lot of value in that face-to-face communication. On the other hand, it's been easy for members who might not otherwise make it, or board members who might otherwise not be able to attend a meeting, to log in very quickly and watch a meeting. So it'll be interesting to see what the future board does in terms of balancing that into the future. And in overall, I think just looking back at the past couple of years, I want to say that our board was very nimble, and I think we did a good job at conducting operations online, when in fact we had been for many years an organization that was very in person. I mean, we didn't even have phone conferencing until like 2.5 years ago. And it was like shortly after we got the phone conferencing system at the meetings, we actually had the pandemic come. So for a group that was very much oriented towards physical interaction, I think this board was very nimble in moving into the virtual space. And next, I want to reiterate the importance of being on the board. So for folks that didn't hear, I've decided not to run for the board. I'm stepping down from the presidency, not running for the board anymore after 5 years. I want to spend time with my son. He's 21 years old, 21 months old. And, you know, he's just at that age where the world is opening up to him. And so I want to spend time with my son and my wife. And so there's other things I need to do in the community. I can say that being on the board of the People's Food Co-op was one of the most thrilling, interesting community projects I've ever been involved with. It's policy governance, which at first seems really dry, but when you try to connect policy governance to real life situations, the real life situation of a grocery store, the real life situation of people having to hammer out consensus, right? And this is something that Gaia, you know, really relayed to me early on in my co-op board service was, you know, working hard to get consensus. Not everyone's going to agree, but you've got to find a way to get at least people to all move in a direction to where you can come up with some sort of compromise, some sort of consensus there. So board service is an amazing thing. I really hope that other folks throw their hat in the next election. And also committee work. There's a lot of committee work. There's the linkage committee, which does a great job of connecting what the board does with the membership and with the community, and relaying to the membership and the community the value of People's Food Co-op, and also the value of co-ops in general and what they provide this world. And so I very much hope that folks will consider, if they can't do board service, consider committee service. It's a couple hours, you know, here and there, and you get to work with a great number of people. And through that, you get to connect with really awesome people in the community. I see Claire Tinkerhess is logged in here. Linkage just had a chance to interact with the Tinkerhesses. Linkage just had the chance to interact with farmers and people doing important development work in the city. And like, there's just been all sorts of stuff that's happened. People wanting to put on events for recycling and reuse, and just an amazing array of interesting people. So again, really, there's a benefit there, but most importantly, we need the board to survive. The board sets the policy that outlines monitoring of the general manager. The board helps guide through creating a vision and through creating what they call ends policies, which are sort of these end goals that you want to achieve in running of the co-op and what we want to provide the community. And if the co-op is to succeed through these challenging financial times and the pandemic and whatnot, we need a strong board. It's the fundamental thing that people in the community can do, is to help contribute to the board. So, and to committees as well. So please consider doing that. Lastly, just to reiterate that I've really loved working with all these great people on the board and in the community in this capacity. You'll still see me and my wife and my son shopping at the co-op all the time. And feel free, anyone, obviously the board members are welcome and the general manager, but anyone in the community, feel free to reach out to me if I can be of any assistance in helping things with the co-op. And I want to also take a brief second to acknowledge Rosie, our board administrator, who's done an excellent job the past couple of years, keeping us organized and keeping the meeting minutes posted and whatnot, and really helping the board in a lot of ways as well. So we are now just up to our time for a break from 7:40 to 7:50. And then at 7:50, we're going to have the vice president's report. So we can turn off our cameras, mute our microphones, and be back here at 7:50. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Jamie.
All right, welcome back, folks, to the next section of the People's Food Co-op Annual Meeting for 2022. And next up is our Vice President's report with Pat Zabawa. Pat, take it away.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Pat Zabawa. Again, Pat Zabawa, Vice President of the board this year, and I joined 2 years ago. Yeah. Jamie stole a lot of what I would say, which is no problem at all. I just, to be more personal, wanted to just talk about my experience on the board for the past 2 years, especially because I was able to meet with the board in person before I joined once, and then COVID happened. So it's been 2 years of COVID. I've been on the board, I mean, pretty much since COVID started. And therefore, I think that my major desire, because it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve on the board, but especially during COVID, it's been difficult to be able to communicate with members, be able to get those personal, in-person side conversations, one-on-one conversations, and getting to know members. So that's something that I would love to get to happen in the future, just as Jamie mentioned. But on that note, because to be more formal, because I wasn't able to have those conversations, each one that I do with the member is really valuable, and I just want to let members know that your feedback is very much valued and very much appreciated as a board member. As a board member, I want to be able to speak on behalf of members, and so each and every little bit of input that we get as a board is very valued, and I encourage everyone to speak up more. As Jamie said, board service and committee service is also so much appreciated and so much in need. But even to members who've popped into a board meeting once, sent an email once, or come to linkage committee meeting once, just knowing your perspective, even these chats at this annual meeting and your attendance here is really awesome to know as a board member, as vice president, as chair of linkage, what you as members in our cooperative are desiring, and that's much appreciated. Just a view of linkage over the past 2 years. We've struggled in this virtual world to get members to attend linkage, and we had Change for Community presentations led by Ray Anderson in the first year of COVID, but they weren't well attended. So this year we continue to have linkage committee meetings, but we didn't have Change for Community meetings. And some members have attended, that's much appreciated. But as Jamie said, there is probably now, with this new world opening up, lots of good, and with the new board, lots of more potential to get members' feedback and interactions between members happening again. I do want to point out, though, that on the other hand, though I said we discontinued our Change for Community, hosting our virtual Change for Community meetings, our members are still very, very generous and really supportive of the PFC in various ways. Ray and I wanted to point out that since COVID started, since February 2020, and these are Angie's numbers, so I appreciate Angie putting this together, but we've raised $40,000 for our Change for Community recipients, which is a pretty large sum for 2 years for money that our Change for Community recipients wouldn't have received otherwise. So our members have been so generous in continuing to support our community, even despite the ups and downs of COVID over the past year. The last thing I wanted to say, I said my appreciation to all the members who have given us feedback, contribute to us, and feel free to, please do continue to attend a board meeting, attend a linkage committee meeting, join the board, join linkage committee nominations committee, as well as email us anytime. Like I said, your feedback is very welcome. And I do want to say an appreciation for our candidates for stepping up and asking to be nominated and running for election this cycle. So much appreciated to you personally. That's it from me. Thank you so much to everyone.
Excellent. Thank you to our vice president for stepping up and doing a great job. Now let's move on to the treasurer's report with Ray Anderson. Ray, take it away. Unmute yourself.
Good evening. I am taking on the numbers tonight, and my message tonight is a 3-alarm call. People's Food Co-op has reported a profit loss every year since 2012, with reported losses skyrocketing to over 200,000 in 2020 and over 400,000 this year. It is fortunate that PFC has remained open and serving you, and as a result has been helped in the past 2 years by loans from the Paycheck Protection Program and from an economic injury disaster loan. Our $230,000 loss in 2020 was completely offset by a one-time PPP loan forgiveness. This year's loss of $430,000 is being actually almost completely offset by the IRS's, again, one-time employee retention credit. While this all goes into the good news column, the truth is our cooperative cannot continue to withstand these kind of profit losses for much longer. Our shopper numbers have decreased by 17% over the last year. That's an average of 532 shoppers per week. While blame can be explained by the pandemic restrictions and concerns, the truth is the average shopper count has also experienced a steady decline over the last 8 years. The National Co-op Grocers, NCG, has listed our co-op in the 6 million yearly sales category, which we consistently reported in our annual report starting in 2012 until 2018. This year's sales are significantly down to just over 4 million, an annual drop of 2.5 million in comparison to our 2016 annual report. In December, the board authorized the accounting firm of Wegner and Associates of Madison, Wisconsin, to conduct a thorough audit of our store's financials. We recently received a clean audited opinion for the financial statement representing fiscal 2021. Thanks to a 10% increase in our active members this year, our members now number almost 2,300, which has strengthened our equity and helped us significantly through some very rocky sales losses. Your PFC board worked with our general manager throughout the last year on a 3-year business plan, which outlines various benchmarks and strategies to reach profitability. They include reinstating the prepared foods department and a return to the full use of the cafe side of the store. Meanwhile, though, we need members to consider at least adding one more of their monthly stops for groceries at PFC. We do know from our recent shopper survey that many members would shop more often at PFC if there was dedicated parking, if there was more selection and less of a crammed feel to the physical space. We also know that changes need to be made to enhance the shopping experience at PFC, but we will continue to be unable to make major changes until we become operationally profitable. In short, we all have a role in keeping PFC an important resource and open for the community this coming year, and hopefully in years to come. So join me in wishing PFC a good year this year. I am a proud supporter, and thank you for listening tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Ray, for that excellent treasurer's report. And right now we have another basket raffle. So Pat, go ahead and provide us with the next winner.
Yeah, I'll roll the dice here. Number 18, which on my list is Carolyn Hedgecole. Sorry to misspeak it, but congratulations.
All right, congratulations to our winner of the gift basket. And now we're going to move to Michael Metzger, board member who is actually an educator at the business school, and he's going to provide us an overview of the survey results that we've been sort of mulling over and analyzing. So Michael, take it away.
All right, thank you, everybody. I am actually not going to delve real deeply into all the rich information of the survey, but I want to give you the high level stuff. But I am very much about complete and total transparency, and I'm going to check with the board to see, this is in draft form and it needs to be approved before it can be circulated, but I would very much like to have all information in the hands of members and shoppers for that matter. I can tell you that that we had 884 shoppers complete this survey, and 633 of those were members. That was a 15% overall response rate for our member shoppers, and very impressive. So I'm going to propose that at some future date, we have another session where we can mull over the really wonderful data that's in there, things that are very relevant to user experience and product assortment. And these are things that fall under the jurisdiction of our general manager, but they're really helpful, and I think you should be aware of them. What I will say is this, though, obviously there's a big, it's in some people's minds, it's a big question about this relocation of our store. And the survey, if you took the survey, it obviously addressed that question, so that's no secret. The results of that particular question were that 39% of respondents either strongly or moderately opposed a move of the store, and 34% strongly or moderately supported the idea of a move of the store, and about 27% were neutral. So that's obviously an interesting sticking point that we will need to address, and I'm sure we'll address that with transparency. And it's a difficult issue, I think, but I think possibly the very future of the store is in the balance. Possibly, I say. Full disclosure, this board member joined the board to be a part of a community neighborhood store, and I really wanted to get to know my neighbors. So I'm not supportive of that move. I think there's other things that can be done to improve shopper experience and increase retention and even average ticket spend at our store. But we're a big tent. We have people with different ideas and different approaches to that. And I've been learning a lot from that, but I do have my feelings on that as a business professor and a marketer. So full disclosure on that. I don't know if it makes sense to go into the details of that, but we are divided on the move of this store. So if you wanted to look me up at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business website and shoot me an email, I would be very happy to engage memberships. I joined precisely to get to know people in my community. So I'm very interested in doing that and working with you for or against the move. there's really wonderful, valuable information, but I'd really like to be able to present it on a screen and show you pie charts and such things. So I'm going to allow any other board member to comment on that survey because we've all seen it. My big issue was the move. I would like to do a deep dive into user experience. There are grocery stores that are making money in our close proximity too. That is Carytown. So I don't think that's impossible. But again, I entered this with a bias towards my neighborhood store. I respect the other people that hold different opinions on that. But would anybody else like to comment from the board or from the community on anything that I've said regarding the survey?
Matt, go ahead.
I appreciate the effort and time that went into taking survey. This is pretty consistent with former survey information that we've seen, which shows sharply divided, about 1/3 strongly opposed, about 1/3 strongly favor, and about 1/3 not sure about store relocation. It's a toughie, and I'm glad that, I'm not glad that nothing's changed, but I'm not surprised that we see a consistent result to surveys that have been conducted over the past 15 years. But thank you for your time, effort, and the information.
Thanks for that historical context.
All right, Michael, is there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, not. I hope to be able to, I hope for the board to be able to reach out with more detail once we've approved the release of this report. I think it belongs to members as far as I'm concerned. If you participated, you should have access to the information. But I'm not sure everybody agrees with that, but that's my stand, and I'll work to make that available to everyone, and hope to meet you in the future. Thanks for attending tonight.
So there is a condensed version of the annual report that is available to folks that we can talk about during the next section. So let's actually move on to the election results. So Pat, go ahead and take it away with the election results.
Sure, absolutely. I'm forgetting how to share my screen. Yeah. So this is the first election. I'm as Lincoln's chair, and I think I'm unmuted. Wrong button. I apologize, everyone. As Link's chair, this is my first time being involved in, well, I was elected 2 years ago, but I'm involved in counting the election. So appreciation to Ray Anderson for guiding me along in counting the ballots. We counted the paper ballots, combined them with the online ballots, made sure there was no duplication, deduplication. Thank you to Susan and Angie, the staff of the store, for also their efforts there. But our election results are, for our three candidates, Amanda McCrellis won 352 votes, Susan Randall 341, and Connor Levy 337. There are 9 ballots that were empty with abstentions, and 385 total ballots, which we as a board are very grateful for. Going back to a lot of our presentations, officer presentations, very appreciative of the members' involvement. Lastly, on this line, there were 8 spoiled ballots for various reasons. Most likely no member number or member name not matching member number. There were ballots that were not counted in that total. So congratulations to Amanda and Susan and Connor, and we're excited to have you join us. And it's awesome for us to have held an election as a co-op. This is an important part of our governance policy, governance practices.
Excellent. And for folks that aren't familiar with the process, essentially at the next meeting, there will be a convening of the current board, which then vote to accept the election results. And then we, after accepting the election results, the members who are stepping away will literally step away from the virtual table and let the new members take their seats. And yeah, Pat, did you have something else?
Well, I was going to say, it might be worth mentioning to the members, a lot of members who follow, but with board members stepping away, next term we will have 5 board members, but in our bylaws we can have up to 9, so we still have 4 open spots. We'll still be a board short of volunteer members with lots of work to do.
Yes, and the board has the option of between elections appointing board members by vote of the board. So folks should, and it's not a tedious process to do that. So if folks are interested between now and the next election, please do reach out to the board. And you can reach out to myself or Ray or anyone else who's been on the board if you want someone to sort of walk you through what it's like to be a board member. Current board members can do that as well. So please feel free to reach out if you're interested in board service. So now we're going to open it up to general questions from the membership for any one of the board members and the general manager, and we will try to answer all of your questions, well, as many of them that we can, and then we'll close out with some last things. So I'm going to open the floor, and folks, feel free to ask your questions.
Actually, Jamie, what do you think about starting? We had a couple questions pop up in the chat. Maybe we can start with those.
Sure. Let me scroll back here and find those.
I think we had one from Nancy and one from Matthew.
Yeah, let's see. So, okay. So Nancy Fisher says, can someone please elaborate on the rationale for moving the PFC storefront from its current location? Does the co-op need a larger footprint? Are they hoping to draw more customers from other areas of the community? Has the co-op done any member surveys about how moving the store from its current location might affect its sales and revenue? And so we'll hand this to the general manager first, and then the board I can chime in as board president about sort of this process from at least from the board's perspective. So Angie, go ahead.
Sure. That's an excellent question, Nancy. Thank you. Yes, the process of relocation is a very long and very engaged one. We're currently at the point, and by we, I mean myself and the board, of discussing it and opening that discussion out to the membership. So as Michael mentioned, we did have some questions on the member shopper survey about it. Back, I believe in 2019, we held some town halls open to the community to discuss it. And I believe that there should be many more discussions, both at the board level and at the community level, about what our membership and our community wants and needs from its co-op, because we exist to serve the community. As far as the needs to relocate, there are many. Our physical plant is older and is very inefficient. Don't get me wrong, I love the 216 and 214 addresses. They will forever have a soft spot in my heart, but neither of them were meant to be a cafe nor a grocery store. And that causes everything from us having to store heavy supplies down in the basement to the way our refrigeration is set up for our coolers and freezers, to the way we receive groceries and process them. The layout of our store actually, unfortunately, makes our employees inefficient out of necessity. I would love to, also from our member shopper survey, people talked about wanting to increase local options and wanting to have greater variety and a larger footprint store. And we're not talking, like super center size, or just a little bit bigger than our current location would allow us to meet some more of those needs. And although we certainly do currently and, intend to continue to promote non-car commuting, the reality is, some of our shoppers do commute by car, and the fact that we have no parking can inhibit, if you have 15 minutes and you're driving home and you have to get dinner on the table for the kids. Are you gonna, even if you love the co-op, are you gonna spend 10 minutes looking for a parking spot? Or are you just gonna buzz into another competitor? And those are just kind of, to my mind, some of the high points about why an engaged discussion and concerted thought about our relocation options is very necessary for PFC to have.
And from the board perspective, this is something that we've grappled with quite a bit. The board basically delegates to the general manager by way of policies and ends goals. And one of the things is several of the policies point to keeping the co-op alive, keeping the co-op financially solvent, and serving the community. And so it's a balance of all of those things. And the general manager has, to a majority of the board members, made the argument that for the co-op to survive, it's necessary to have a bigger footprint. And so we are volunteers, the board of volunteers, and we look to our general manager and to other experts in the community for input on this. And the evidence, as interpreted by the majority of board members, is that this is something that needs to be done. And it's a long process. You just heard from our guest speaker earlier, how much of a process that is. And we've put a lot of thought into the steps that need to be taken to make our current location as profitable as it can be, because it takes money to make money, as they say. It takes money to get to a location, to move to a location. And we've got guidance from a lot of people who've been involved in moves, and we are hoping to have the support of the community in that. And so this is a charged topic, of course. And so members should feel very welcome and encouraged to reach out to the board to continue this dialogue as this process progresses. And we don't want to have people feel disconnected from the co-op. This was not an easy decision to come to this point. And we want to bring people with us on this journey. So do any of the other board members want to chip in any thoughts? Yeah, Ray, go ahead.
Yeah, since I'm the numbers person tonight, I just want to return to what I was saying to Nancy, or directing my comments now to everybody, actually, is that yeah, I'd like to believe that we could be profitable, but looking at trends for the last 10 years and how the numbers have declined, I have been forced to realize that continuing in this space, we will die in place.
Yeah. Any other board members?
Yeah. Well, depending on I guess what our ambitions are in terms of size. I mean, whether or not we can stay in the space that we currently are. I mean, approaching this from a marketing standpoint and a business standpoint. there, I believe, are things that can be done to improve user experience. And the way we compete is really critical. There are organizations and grocers in our very close proximity that are doing they're doing okay. They're showing a profit, and I look forward to talking more about those things in a very frank way the next time we meet. I just don't feel it's really appropriate to bring it up right now, but there's not unanimity on the move. So I think it's just important to say that. So if you're feeling that way and you'd like to speak, I'm more than happy to engage the community on that.
Well, I think in a lot of ways, Nancy and anyone else who, had the same questions, all of our answers kind of indicate where we are at the process. We're in an alignment period. We're in a discussion and information gathering period. And, like I said, we have every intention of engaging the membership all throughout the process and, in that process. Because, understanding and, transparency, as Michael said, and making sure that it's what the membership and the community wants would be integral to the success of the co-op in any place we put it.
Yeah, I think that's key, is that, I mean, ultimately, wherever we end up, we have to have the supportive membership to continue shopping there, and even more members to shop, because going to a larger space means the need for more sales, et cetera. So Matthew, I'm gonna cover your question just because Matt Graff asked, do you want to go ahead and ask it? Yeah, go ahead and ask it, and then if you want, we can clarify.
Actually, I added to the thread that I think I did answer my own question.
Mhm.
The survey abstract mentions some 5,700 members. Perhaps when Ray referred to 2,300 members, he was referring to the active member qualification, which I think used to mean in my day, they've shopped within the last 6 months or within the last year or something like that. And that was generally a smaller, the membership at that time was 10,000, and we didn't really have 10,000 people shopping. We only had a few thousand people shopping. So I think that's where my confusion came from in the tonight question. The member share dollars, the $830,000 that the members have put in our hands to support the store, and that's their equity share. That's probably related to the 5,000 number way more than it is to the 2,300 number. And when you do that arithmetic, you come out under the 146. So that mean that we have people who are contributing over time, or who are still back at the $60 level, or some other thing. So I answered my question about the member share number on the balance sheet. I'm sorry to distract you guys.
No, I think that's helpful, though, because that's something that a lot of folks don't really,
it's a number deep question, and it
discussions.
doesn't really.
It's fine. It's fine. So any other questions or comments for the board or the general manager?
I have a follow-up for Matt there. That's something I wanted to follow up with you on, which is active members now means fully invested members, as opposed to the number that you saw in the survey, which are the total number of members, many of which have chosen so far not to reinvest at the higher membership number because of current policies in the for the board. We have no mechanism to decide about the money that is actually in limbo right now. And that's something that the board may want to address with a bylaw change in the future, because it is in limbo. So just to follow up on that.
Okay, great. And we had another question from Nancy. Nancy says, I heard someone say that a larger footprint would allow for additional local products. Are there other product lines that are not currently offered that you foresee adding in a larger building?
I would say that would primarily come from produce. Our produce, the kind of fresh jewel of the co-op, and by far our most local subsection. It's one of those things that if it were larger, we would carry more. And right now our produce staff, we can't carry 3 different farms charred because they would each have one facing, whereas in a substantially larger case, we could have, if warranted, a whole 4-foot run that was all charred, and 3 or 4 farms could each have a full shelf. I think that's where we would see the biggest impact and an increase of local goods in a larger store.
Thank you, Angie. Any other questions or comments for the board or the general manager or to the membership? Anything to bring up in discussion for the membership here? I did want to provide one bit, so I'm going to post in the channel, in the chat channel, a direct link to our annual report. And if you go to the annual report, on the last few pages, we actually do have a summary of the survey results that you can read for yourself. This is a condensed summary that's not nearly as dry as the full text of the results, but it gives you a good sense of the results of the survey and the demographics of the membership and whatnot. And again, this was prepared by the Survey Research Center at the University of Wisconsin, River Falls. So if you go to that link, you'll see our annual report, our 2021 annual report, and this synopsis, this condensed version of the survey results is available there. And don't worry about that link if you're not able to capture it now. You can always go to the website, and under the board tab, there's a link to all of the annual reports going back many years, as well as meeting minutes that our board administrator Rosie so lovingly curates. Any other questions or comments or thoughts that membership want to share with the board or with the general manager or with other members? Okay, and there weren't any additional agenda items posted in the store. Members had the opportunity to write suggested agenda items, but there weren't any in the store. So I think now we will move on to the last basket raffle.
Yeah, let me roll the virtual dice. And it's 12, who on my list is Alice Burke. Congratulations, Alice.
So I wanted to respond to one question that came in from Susan Randall. It says, will the just released new history of the co-op be available in print for purchase? And the board and the general manager are gauging interest in that. It's one of those things where, even if you do self-publishing, there's sort of a threshold that you would need to meet to make it viable. So the board discussed this actually for a significant amount of time, and the decision was to see what the interest is in the community in a printed version. So I'm sure you'll hear about that in the future. All right, and now we are going to hand it off to Ray, who's going to do an introduction here, and then we're going to hand it off then to one of our former board members, a longtime co-op member, for our remembrance. Ray.
Yeah, as you may have read, the board decided to dedicate this meeting to the memory of Linda Diane Felt. Linda Diane was a long-term People's Food Co-op board member and incredibly involved with the co-op over the years. I reached out to a few former board members who worked very closely with Linda Diane for memories that we could project tonight. Gaia Kyle submitted one to me and I'd like to play it for you. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and then pull that up. Let me see if I can share that. Okay, let's go with full screen. Let's see what not sure how to get full screen, but I'll just go ahead and play it.
Ray, if you go to under view, I believe it is, you can go to full screen. So go to the menu item view.
Okay.
Up at the top there, and yeah.
There we go. Thank you very much, Jamie. Okay, here we go.
Linda Diane Felt was an important person in the history of the People's Food Co-op. It was a great loss when Linda Diane passed away last November, and I'd like to say a few things about Linda. Linda Diane realized that Diane was the goddess of the moon, and her name became Beautiful Moonfield. She was an Aquarius. I'm no great astrologer, but I think she had characteristics commonly ascribed to Aquarius. She was a humanitarian, erudite, strong-willed, creative, and visionary. Linda Diane was also a woman who stood with integrity. I worked with her on the board of our beloved food co-op. She served in that capacity for 10 years. I overlapped with her on the board for just a couple of those years, but her involvement in the co-op preceded her term on the board and continued after. I knew her first back in the 1980s. In the mid-80s, she was campaign manager for my best friend, Mark Weinstein. Now he goes as Maxine. When he ran for the PFC board, she supported him. I also remember that she served on several co-op committees over the years. After her time on the board, she would occasionally show up at board meetings for public comments to try to keep us going in the right direction. Perhaps co-op members will remember Linda Diane most for the herbal health classes that she volunteered to teach for the co-op. With these classes, she was helping the co-op to fulfill its cooperative principle number 5, education. Of all the people who offered to teach classes for PFC, Linda taught the most. Linda was inspired by wise woman herbalism, a tradition that involves building relationships with plants. Where when I look at the herbal shelves at PFC, I see several herbs that were Linda's herbal friends. Linda Diane was one of the pillars of Ann Arbor's alternative healing community, stretching back to when the community was small. In that capacity, she was a practitioner, a teacher, a publisher, and a leader. Linda was also a community activist. Even in childhood, she campaigned once to save an open field from development. She rose up through the ranks of youth activism to the national level, where she learned that power brought with it its subjugation to control, and she wisely pulled away from that. She turned towards local activism. I don't know exactly the extent of her involvement in community causes. But whenever I spoke to her about such matters, she was well informed and had thoughtful opinions to share. The co-op community will long miss Linda Diane Felt. Ann Arbor has lost one of its great citizens.
It's a very moving tribute. As an aside, Linda Diane was the first chair of the city's Transportation Commission, which which continues to work to make Ann Arbor safe and welcoming to people who want to use all methods of mobility, walking, biking, and whatnot. And so she's just touched so many lives. And Susan said, thank you, Guy. And I want to thank you as well, Guy. That was wonderful, sharing those words. If anyone else has any thoughts they'd like to share at this time about Linda Diane, please feel free to do so. I remember running into her at the opening of the bikeway on William Street, and she was very passionate about bicycling, even after having some health issues. And I think that that was a testament to her activism and also her desire to be active and stay as active as possible. And engage with her surroundings as much as possible. All right. Well, thanks, folks. This brings to a close our annual meeting for 2022. And we do appreciate you sitting through this virtual event. And we're hoping that next time it can be in person. Do any of the board members or the general manager want to share any closing thoughts?
Thank you for your service, Jamie. This is your last meeting as the president, so it's really nice working with you.
It's been a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, and extend it to Ray as well. Jamie and Ray, it's been a pleasure to work with you. And Susan, Connor, and Amanda, continue to work with you, but Susan and Connor, looking forward to your strength and vision being added to our board.
Sorry for not recognizing Ray. Super pleasure to meet you, Ray, in the store from time to time and to serve alongside you.
Excellent. All right. Anything the members want to share with each other or share with the board or the general manager? All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, folks. Again, the annual report up on the website. Please check it out and please feel welcome to join board meetings, either as a board member or a committee member or an interested member of the community. We're always interested to be connected with you. So again, yours in cooperation. We'll talk to you next time. See you.
Thank you, Ray and Jamie.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.